good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are in the world. It's morning here in Oxford, Ohio, and my name is Molly Heidemann. I'm the Director of International Student and Scholar Services here at Miami, and we have our final pre-arrival webinar for you all today to talk pretty specifically about entering the US and arriving on campus for fall semester. And so we are going to be talking about details related to traveling to the US, arriving on campus, some of the stuff about quarantine that we just sent out this week, and a few other details. So I will be presenting along with my colleague, Yuenan Jim Rodriguez, who I'm sure most, if not all of you, have been in some amount of correspondence with recently. She's our orientation coordinator. So we'll be going back and forth on some of the different topics here. And as always with these sessions, you are welcome to use the chat function to ask questions throughout the presentation. We have a couple of other staff members with us who will be helping to answer questions. We have Carol Olason, the director of the ACE program. So if we have any ACE students with us today, she's here and can obviously answer questions about ACE, but about other things as well. And then we also have our colleague Dan Sinitar from our office, ISSS, who will be helping with answering questions as well. And then any questions that we don't get answered through the chat, we will address at the end of the presentation in more of an open format Q&A portion. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Yuenan to start out with the first topic.
All right, thank you, Molly. So the first slide I'm going to talk about the cover is enrollment for fall 2021. But before I get into that, I do want to share with you this session is recorded. We'll send out the recording afterwards and will be posted on our website as well. And we will share that link, our website link in the end, so you will see all that. So enrollment for fall 2021. I actually very familiar with most people attending here. The name looks very familiar. So I actually do think most of you guys have completed the placement testing, which is great. But we do have a small amount of students who haven't done that. And then for you guys, you will receive email communication in early August, letting you know you need to take placement testing and when and detailed instruction, just so I do want to mention that here. And all students, if you're getting that email, means you need to take placement tests. So our advisors know how to advise you, so you know where your English level is and which course is appropriate for you to take. So that's placement testing. And right now it's really in the middle of advising and registration. And many of you here from the name I can see here, I believe you have talked to the advisor, you have registered for already. But if you have not, so here I'm just gonna remind you the procedure. So be sure to complete Canvas, complete all the Canvas required modules. And that's how you're gonna get the invitation to schedule a meeting with advisors. So make sure to do that. And beyond advising registration, our Canvas has all the good information you need to know. And also today we will also publish more information about just a lot of things you need to know before you come into Miami, and also good information sessions. So they will be published in Canvas very soon. Canvas. And for fall 2021, students need to make sure you're enrolled full time. That means for undergraduate student, you need to register a minimum of 12 credit hours. And for graduate student means you need to take a minimum of 9 credit hours. And at least one course must be taken in person. Since fall 2021, we're back to normal-ish in-person courses. And many of you have probably completed the interlink already. If you have not, you probably received a reminder recently, actually. So make sure to submit the fall 2021 study plan confirmation via interlink. but be sure to submit this after you obtain your F1 visa, when you know your plans for fall. And the deadline to submit the plan is August 23rd, which is the first day of class. So you do still have some time to do that. Okay, so I'll have Molly cover.
Yeah. Just quickly, I would add that, yes, August 23rd is the deadline. I mean, obviously, if you are coming to the US, then you presumably will have gotten your visa prior to that and prior to coming. So if you can submit that interlink form prior to arrival, that would be ideal. So please do try to submit it prior to arrival if at all possible. I wanted to just take one moment. Carol, is there anything else you want to add about placement testing or anything since you are here? If not, we can just move on, but.
Just to reiterate that when you arrive for orientation, when you first arrive that morning, you will get instruction about where to go for your testing. So look for me, or wait to hear from me. If you're not arriving right at that time, you will get an appointment time that you will have an online Zoom test for speaking, and you'll also get information about where you will report, or excuse me, not report, where you will find the module for completing your writing test. So that will all happen. You'll get all that information as soon as you arrive on campus.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to one of everyone's favorite topics, COVID-19 vaccinations. I'm going to focus on vaccinations here for a moment. In a little bit, I will get to quarantine, which is our new favorite topic. So COVID-19 vaccinations. You've probably heard most of this information already, so I'm really just reiterating some of the key points here. So Miami University is not currently requiring the COVID-19 vaccination. It is strongly encouraged and recommended, but it is not required. Having said that, if you have been vaccinated, you should, I should say vaccinated by an FDA or WHO authorized vaccine, you should be submitting that documentation to Miami. So the FDA authorized vaccines are the ones we have here in the US. That includes the Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. There are, I believe, 4 other WHO approved vaccines. So that would be the AstraZeneca, the Sinopharm, Sinovac, and Covishield. So those are acceptable. And so if you have been vaccinated with one of those vaccines, you should upload your documentation into the MedProctor system. It does need to be in English or translated into English, so be aware of that. And I guess they prefer the JPEG format, the image, the JPG file. So that's the first I'm hearing that. So I don't know if other formats are acceptable, but it sounds like that is the preferred format when you are submitting that documentation. The sooner you can submit it, the better. Health Services is working very quickly to try to review all of those vaccination records. And keep in mind, they're reviewing them for all Miami students. So literally thousands of records. So it is taking them up to a week to respond with an email through MedProctor to say if your documentation has been approved, or if something additional is required or something is missing, something to that effect. So be watching to get that message within about a week after you submit your vaccination documents. If you are not vaccinated yet, have not had the chance to be vaccinated and would like to be vaccinated, you can get vaccinated here in the US after arrival. There will be some opportunity to do that on campus through Health Services, but there are also vaccines available at numerous providers off campus. So pretty much any location that has a pharmacy, like if you've heard of CVS or Walgreens, our grocery store, Kroger, and Walmart, I believe, are all offering the vaccine pretty much on a walk-in basis at this point. So there should be ample opportunity for you to get vaccinated if you would like to be. And it's free of charge. That's the other thing I was going to say. There's no cost to getting the COVID vaccine here in the US. Some providers will ask for insurance information, but it is not required. There's no fee for the vaccine. Having said that, if you, I want to use this opportunity to remind everyone that you will be automatically enrolled in the student health insurance through Aetna, and that takes effect on August 1st. Although sometimes there's a bit of a delay in getting everyone enrolled into it. So August 1st is this Sunday. They cannot enroll everyone in it until they are enrolled and they have a chance to kind of sort through the list of everyone who's enrolled and things like that. So if you don't get enrolled in it until, let's say, mid-August, it is retroactive to August 1st. So the coverage is retroactive to August 1st. But if you are concerned, if maybe you have a medical condition or something like that to where you're going to need treatment immediately or need medication immediately or something like that, you can proactively request to enroll in it to make sure that you have it already available and ready to go. But otherwise, there could be a bit of a delay. Just know that the coverage will be retroactive to August 1. Okay, I'm sure there are probably going to be questions, or maybe there's already questions being asked in the chat, but I'm going to move on and we can always address any questions that come up later. So I'm going to shift my focus a little bit to just traveling to the US. So as I believe probably most or all of you know, the CDC does require international travelers to provide documentation of a negative COVID test within the 3 days prior to travel. So you will need to get tested for COVID-19 within the 3 days prior to your flight and be able to show documentation of that negative test in order to be able to board your flight. I'm going to get it. Oh, actually, can you hold on? Some of this we'll get into when I talk about quarantine, but I will just say, actually, yes, that was pretty much it. Other than there's no physical exam required. So we've had few students ask about whether they're required to have a physical exam, I guess, prior to travel, and no, there's no requirement for that. So the only requirement really is to be able to show that negative COVID test. Okay, so in terms of immigration documents that you will need to enter the US, of course, as always, your passport, which does need to be valid and needs to be valid for at least 6 more months at the time you enter the US. So please do make sure that your passport is not about to expire and needs to be valid for at least 6 more months into the future, beyond your entry date into the US. You need to have your valid F1 or J1 visa. I'm guessing most of the students here on this webinar are F1 students. So you, of course, need to have obtained that valid F1 visa in order to enter the US. And you need to have your I-20 or DS 2019 for J1 students. Those are being issued electronically now, which basically means they are sent as attachments, PDF attachments. So when, actually, I should modify that a little bit. Those of you who have received a brand new I-20 through the admissions office may have also been sent the original hard copy. Any I-20s issued by our office have just been through the email attachment as a PDF. Regardless, you need to have a paper document with you when you enter the US. So if you received it electronically as an email attachment, you need to print it and sign it. You cannot simply show it on your mobile device. You need to have the paper version with you to enter the US. Okay, quarantine. So this is new information that we just sent out this week. And, I apologize for having to announce this information so late. This was just determined by Miami University through their correspondence with health officials based on the fact that, this Delta variant is increasing, and just to ensure the safety of our entire community. So Miami is going to be following the CDC guidelines for international travelers, which honestly have been out for months now, which says that all individuals arriving from abroad must get tested for COVID 3 to 5 days after their travel is complete. So essentially 3 to 5 days after arrival. We will help to facilitate that. I'll say a few more words about that in just a moment. Unvaccinated individuals are also expected to quarantine for 7 days after travel is complete. Now, when I say unvaccinated, that would of course mean anyone who's not vaccinated at all. It would also include students who've only received 1 dose of a 2-dose series of one of the WHO authorized vaccines. So our medical staff has determined that due to the effectiveness of the FDA approved vaccines, the Pfizer and the Moderna, students who've had 1 dose of those can be exempt from quarantine. But anyone who's only received 1 dose of a WHO approved vaccine or have not received any vaccination are expected to quarantine for 7 days upon arrival or after their travel is complete. So those of you who will be living on campus will be able to quarantine in your assigned residence hall. So we are working to make sure that linens will be provided. So your sheets, blankets, towels that you can use on a temporary basis while in quarantine until you can get out to purchase your own linens. We'll also be able to order meals online through Miami Catering and have those delivered to your room. We recognize that those of you who will be in quarantine will miss what we had planned for our in-person orientation activities. We are already actively working on finalizing a virtual schedule of orientation for those who will be in quarantine so that you can stay engaged, get the information you need, meet other students and IPOLs virtually throughout the week, things like that. So we will have opportunities available. And after the quarantine period is complete, we expect to offer some campus tours and things like that to help get you acclimated to campus prior to when classes start. Coming back to testing for a minute, as I said, testing is required for all international travelers 3 to 5 days after arrival. So those who are arriving in that first group, the brand new students who are arriving on time, so the August 12th airport pickup, we expect to facilitate your testing that weekend, the weekend of August 14th and 15th, through Student Health Services on campus in conjunction with your TB testing. Students who arrive later will likely be able to utilize the walk-in testing that will be set up at Millett Hall on campus. That's also where domestic students who are moving in will be able to get tested. So it's going to be a large kind of walk-in testing operation that is going on from August 18th to 22nd. You will be able to leave quarantine to get tested, because there's really no other option. So you'll be able to leave quarantine to get tested and then are expected to return directly to your quarantine location following testing. If your test is negative, as we hope it is for everybody, you're still required to complete the quarantine period. If your test would happen to come back positive, you would be moved into the isolation location on campus where you could be truly isolated from other students so as to prevent the spread of the virus. Okay, that was a lot of information that was pretty much all sent out via email, so hopefully it didn't take too many of you by surprise, but I just wanted to go ahead and cover it again here verbally. And now I'm going to turn it back over to you, Anon.
All right, now I will talk about kind of more detailed things about the airport pickup and moving dates and all that. So many of students have registered for our airport pickup services already and registered for our orientation. So here, just want to stress again, the dates is August 12th and 16th at 9 o'clock. And the location is at CVG, Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport, Doubletree Hotel. So you will receive more communication before we pick you up with more detailed instructions. So be sure to be ready at the hotel lobby at 9 o'clock. That's where you check in with our office. And then you will pick up your student ID from us directly if you submitted your photo ID. So again, make sure to submit your photo ID so we can get your student ID printed and bring with us when we pick you up from the airport hotel. So be sure to register as well. And there is a cost associated with our transportation service, because we did notice the amount of students who register for our pickup service and the amount of students who pay doesn't really match. So you will probably see communication from us as well. Make sure you pay for that. So yes, so watch for emails. And I do know some students are not, arriving on the 12th. Some of you are not arriving on the 16th. So there are other options. So we will show all the links towards the end so you can check our website. So you can, contact taxi or maybe use Uber, Lyft. On our website, we kind of tells you like approximately how much that costs, even tells you how much to tip the driver. So you can definitely check our website for more information if you don't ride our bus. So again, our bus is on the 12th. That's for student, fall 2021 student coming here for the full orientation program. And the 16th is for students who are coming US for the very first time, but you are fall 2020 or spring 2021 student, because you guys had a virtual orientation already when you started with us, but now it's more like, help you get familiar with the campus, because you're here arriving in person for the very first time. So again, make sure to send me your photo ID. We can have your ID printed and bring with us when we pick you up. And you probably just received your room assignment letter a day or 2 days ago, telling you your moving date is August 18th. And you probably also seen our newsletter about pre-semester housing requests. So I just want to clarify. So for all fall 2021 students, your moving date is August 12th, which is the day we're going to pick you up from airport, because you guys are all coming here for orientation. So we're going to put in a group housing request on behalf of our students. So make sure, you can, when you come, there's a room ready for you to move in. But for fall 2020 and for spring 2021 student, you will need to do that on your own, because your orientation is not required. That's why we asked you to register. And also we've been telling you to request pre-semester housing as well. And the portal just opened a day or two ago. So if you haven't done that, make sure do that after today's meeting and putting the request. And that's pre-semester housing. And again, here I do want to address that the earliest student can move into resident hall is August 12th. So if you already made your travel plans, if you are arriving prior to August 12th, very likely you will actually have to find a hotel room or arrange other housing arrangement for yourself. So I do want to kind of clarify that. And then if you are riding our bus, the moving process is really easy. We would take good care of you from the moment we pick you up. So you'll receive your student ID from our office, which is your room key. And also your ID is what you use to dining hall to eat, for all that kind of stuff. And when we pick you up, when we help you moving, you will have iPhone. So we will help you with, luggage. And if you have trouble with ID card and all that kind of things, we'll help troubleshoot and make sure you're moving. And then in the afternoon, we will provide a shopping trip to local Walmart, so you can get just necessities if you want to get, beddings or maybe food, maybe kitchen pots and pans. So you don't have to buy everything or bring everything with you. We do provide that shopping trip the day we pick you up. And there will be more details on our website. And also we even have a suggested packing list for our students and tells you what not to bring and what we recommend to bring. As I said again, we have all these links we'll share later. I will share the link later. And then for students who are not riding our bus, if you submitted your ID in advance, and then you need to check in with our office for orientation directions, depending on when you arrive. So, you know, you might receive a little bit different direction depending on if you're fall 2020 student or fall 2021 students. And you will receive your ID card from our office. So no need to go other places. But if you did not submit ID photo in advance, the top you have to make actually is campus services. You will need to go over there to take, they will take a picture for you, print your student ID, you will get it from there. And then from there, you need to come to our office to check in with us, and we will give you direction about orientation and other things you need to know, to be aware of. So again, you can see from here, you know, it really is in your benefits to submit photo ID ahead of time, so you can save yourself a trip, especially, you know, just coming to campus, not very familiar. So it'll be easiest if you submit your ID ahead of time, so you can just visit us if you're not riding the bus. And also, I'm not sure if you attended last pre-orientation session when Rob was sharing about the moving. I think he made a very good point. You probably want to have a nice picture in for your ID, looking nice, instead of, you know, after a day travel and all tired and go to student health and go to campus service and take a crappy picture for your ID. So yes, strongly encourage you to submit ID photo early. And then ISSS check-in hours is listed here, August 12th to 20th, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Macmillan Hall International Student Center. We actually might just gonna check in outside if the weather permits. You know, we'll have a tent and tables that I posted just helping students check in. And it's also pretty much a help desk as well. If, you know, during orientation, student, if you have any questions or need any help, welcome to come visit us, and we'll always have IPOs or staff there to help the student, direct student. So yes, come talk to us if you have questions.
Okay, and so just our final slide here before we open up to questions has to do with late arrivals, because we know there are certainly still some concerns about getting visas in time to arrive on campus for orientation. So I guess first I would say if you can be here for the start of orientation, you absolutely should be. That is the best way to get yourself set up for success and to get the information you need and to get acclimated to campus. If you cannot arrive on time because of visa issues or things like that, you definitely need to plan to be here by the first day of classes, which is August 23rd. That is expected, especially because you will be taking in-person courses that begin on that day. Having said that, I know this is an odd year. And I think that if you are going to be just a couple of days late, you should let us know and let your instructors know. And I imagine there will be some flexibility there. We haven't gotten a sort of official word on what faculty have been advised on this. So we're trying to get some more information about that. But you should absolutely be planning to be here the first week, so you don't miss too many classes. Otherwise, you could face some issues remaining registered and just being successful with the coursework. So that's especially for undergrads, really all students, but graduate students, often there's a little bit more flexibility depending on your department and what accommodations they are able to make. So if you are a graduate student who is thinking you may need to arrive late, please communicate with us and your department. We can see if there's additional flexibility. And so that's something we can discuss with your graduate department to see if they're able to let you miss a week or so of the semester and still catch up. Of course, even if you are late arriving to campus, you will have to follow the quarantine and testing requirements. If quarantine causes you to miss some classes, then you do need to communicate with your instructors to let them know that you are in quarantine, and they will be expected to make some accommodations for that, because they should be expecting that there could be students in and out of quarantine during the semester, due to COVID protocols. So be sure to communicate with your instructors about that. And you will be expected to get tested for COVID 3 to 5 days after arrival, whether you're able to do that on campus or at an off-campus location that offers testing. You will have to go to the health center to get your TB test, which is required for all new international students, or I should say most new international students, depending on your country of origin, and to complete your medical check. And if you have not done so by that point, you will have to complete our document check as well. That's where we check over your visa, your I-20, your record of arrival in the US, your I-94. I think we're still kind of working out procedures as to whether we will have you do that electronically through Interlink or actually come in person to our office. So watch for information about that. And then the final thing, which I don't have on here, is that you need to be sure you are registered for classes full time. So, you know, you really should be trying to get registered prior to arrival. Although I guess if students have missed those procedures already, they will be doing that after arrival during orientation. But it is not wise to show up on the first day of classes without a class schedule, because it's going to be challenging to get classes and get caught up. So, you know, please communicate so we can assist you and try to avoid any complications with that. In general, you of course want to try to arrive on time or as close to on time as possible. I guess with that, I think that was our last slide. Is that correct? You went on. So if you want to move on to the questions slide, I know quite. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, actually, before we move to the question Q&A part, I do want to share our website link here and actually share my screen. So let me just put the link in the chat. The link in the chat, and I will share my screen quickly so you can see what I'm looking at. So pretty much all the things we talked about here is covered here. So you have the link here. You know, there's submit your photo ID. You can just click here and see more information in the medical form, Map Proctor, and you know, our interlink is here. Actually, we have a nice video here, kind of a tutorial demo, really walk you through how to fill out the form. So yeah, I will strongly encourage you to utilize this checklist on our website. And even today's recording, it will be posted here afterwards as well. And you know, of course, the orientation registration and all the links is here. So take a look at this site. All right, so I will guess now it's time for questions.
Yes, so I've glanced at the chat and I believe it looks like most of the questions have not been answered yet. I think a few of them have. So I think I can probably just go down here and look through these. Feel free to cut me off if something has been answered already. So if I had only one dose of the Pfizer vaccine, can I still be exempted from the visit Millett Hall before move-in and go straight to my residence hall? So yes. International students are not going to be required to report directly to Millett Hall upon arrival in the same way that domestic students are. And that's because of the slight differences in CDC guidelines for travel. So international students are supposed to get tested 3 to 5 days after arrival. So you will not be going directly to Millett upon arrival to get tested or vaccinated. Instead, that my answer to this question would be, if you have one dose of the Pfizer vaccine, that means you will be exempt from quarantine, which is nice. You'll be able to move straight into your residence hall, and you will just need to get tested for COVID 3 to 5 days after arrival. And assuming that test is negative, you're good to go. And of course, you'll need to try to get your second dose of that vaccine within the recommended time frame. I know that Student Health Services is hoping to have the Pfizer vaccine available for the Millette Testing and Vaccination Center. They are not 100% sure yet that it's going to be Pfizer, but anyone who's only had one dose, you need to make sure you bring documentation of that and get that second dose of the same vaccine within the recommended time frame so that you do become fully vaccinated. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Can students who got fully vaccinated by a WHO approved vaccine get additional doses for US vaccines on campus? What we've been told is yes, that medically that is okay. So if you already have received a WHO vaccine and you would like to get an FDA approved vaccine, most likely Pfizer or Moderna, you can. Now, I don't know if you will be able to do it on campus. Like I said, I think Health Services expects to at least have one vaccination clinic there at Millette, most likely with Pfizer. But there are also numerous vaccine providers in town located off campus where you could potentially go to get the vaccine as well. If my sister can come in to visit in my quarantine time, that's an interesting question. I'm glad to see that your sister's vaccinated. I guess I'm not sure. So I'm not a medical professional. And so some of my ability to answer these sorts of questions is limited. I will say that this is meant to be a self-quarantine. And given that it is your sister and that she is fully vaccinated, my instinct says that that's probably up to you and that is most likely pretty safe. But in general, people, I mean, beyond maybe that very unique situation, people should not be visiting you in quarantine. You should be.
Okay, thank you so much.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I couldn't hear you very well, but yes, I would think that's probably okay. If I get to the US before the 11th, can I go to a separate vaccination center to get vaccinated? Maybe. I think my answer to that is that if you are not vaccinated currently, it looks like Jay Lim asked this question, you're going to have to quarantine first. So while you can leave your quarantine to get tested, you are not expected to get vaccinated until after you have completed your quarantine. At least that's my understanding. Again, it's a self-quarantine. That's a question you could ask Student Health Services, but my understanding is that you would be expected to complete the quarantine period first before getting vaccinated. Can I get vaccinated while in, so I think while in quarantine prior to arrival? I guess I'm not sure if I understand that one. I think I might have just answered it, but I guess I'm not sure what you mean by prior to arrival. Perhaps I've already answered that. I'm gonna move on, and then Jordan, you can add to that maybe if I didn't answer your question. So the next one about the one dose of the Moderna, I think I've already answered yes. You will be able to go straight to your residence hall. You will have to get tested 3 to 5 days after arrival. And of course, you'll want to seek out that second dose of the Moderna vaccine, which you will likely need to do off campus at a provider in town. The next one, if I get vaccinated at Millette, then do I have to be quarantined for 1 week? Well, yes. So I've already somewhat addressed this, that you actually are expected to quarantine prior to getting vaccinated, and you're only exempt from quarantine if you are fully vaccinated by a WHO authorized vaccine, or at least partially vaccinated by an FDA approved vaccine. So you're not going to be able to, I don't think this is going to be possible. I think that you're going to be expected to quarantine first. That's a question where you may want to contact Student Health Services to clarify. It also could depend on your arrival date, because that is only being offered at Millette August 18th to 22nd. So students who are arriving earlier than that will not, the Millette vaccination site will not be open yet. So there's that. I'm arriving in the US on the 2nd. Where would I go to get a test? After arriving in Cincinnati, should I come visit the campus? So you will likely need to just search for a testing site in the community. I know that we did provide a link to where you can search for a testing site. That was in the email that went out this week. Many locations offer testing. So a lot of the same places that offer the vaccine also offer testing. So a lot of pharmacies that have what they call little clinics will, I believe, be able to do testing, but you will need to search for a location to do that. In terms of whether you want to come to campus, I guess my response is you're going to need to quarantine for 7 days if you're not vaccinated. So you need to figure out where you are going to do that. And you're not going to be able to move into your residence hall on campus yet. So if you come here to Oxford, you will likely need to stay in a hotel and I guess complete your quarantine in a hotel, since you would not be able to move into your residence hall. Do I need to show confirmation of quarantine like airline ticket confirming my arrival to the US? I'm currently completing my quarantine. So this is Sagat. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I apologize. I guess I'm under the impression you mean that you've already arrived and are already in quarantine. That's fine. This is a self-quarantine. If you have already arrived, that's fine. You need to self-monitor, and you don't have to show that documentation. You would just be expected to follow this protocol for 7 days, make sure you've gotten tested, and then you're done. You don't have to provide that documentation. Okay, let's see. I am unvaccinated. I have to quarantine 7 days, so I'm going to miss the placement tests. The placement tests are going to be online. Both the speaking and writing placement tests are going to be virtual. So you would be able to complete the placement tests while in quarantine if necessary. So that should not be an issue. I'm thinking of taking the COVID vaccine at Kroger or Walmart on the day of arrival. I'm getting the impression we're getting a lot of questions about this. So I'm going to follow up. I think I will follow up with Student Health Services to try to get an answer to this question as to whether a student could get immediately vaccinated upon arrival and be exempt from quarantine. I'm not super hopeful. I think the answer is going to be that you're expected to quarantine prior to getting vaccinated, but I will ask, and we will provide the answer in some format, probably via email, as soon as possible. Dan or Yuanon, if you could make a note for me so I don't forget to do that. Thank you, since I don't have a way to take a note right here at the moment. Let's see. Oh, Carol had already answered that one. About the quarantine, are there any extra costs? So not that I'm aware of. You would already be paying the nightly fee for staying in your residence hall. So that doesn't change. The linens are being provided free of charge to be used during that time. The meals, I think, are technically covered through the meal plan, if I'm understanding correctly. So you're not like paying for, you're certainly not having to like pay manually for each meal. I think that they're coming out of the meal plan. So I'm not aware of any extra costs associated with being in quarantine. If we are vaccinated by a WHO approved vaccine, do we need to quarantine until we get the COVID test? No, if you are fully vaccinated by a WHO approved vaccine, meaning 2 doses, if it's a 2-dose series, and you've uploaded that documentation into MedProctor and have had it approved, then you are exempt from quarantine. But you have to be fully vaccinated if it's a WHO approved vaccine. Dan, I don't know if you've already answered this question about the Global Friendship Day and Kenwood in terms of, well, wait, I suppose those events are canceled. I guess I'm not sure if that question means canceled for those who are in quarantine or canceled entirely. They have not been canceled entirely. Students who are fully vaccinated and not in quarantine are able to participate in those events. if you have not been vaccinated and you are in quarantine, you would certainly miss that first Kenwood Mall trip on that Sunday. There's another one on the Thursday, the 19th, excuse me, that some students may be able to participate in if they are out of quarantine by that point. Dan, do you want to add anything about how that affects Global Friendship Day?
Yes. So to answer the question, no, those things are not canceled, but kind of how you participate in them will probably vary according to your kind of quarantine vaccination status. So I think, right, and some of that does kind of depend on when you actually arrive to campus. But for those students, right, getting out of quarantine on the 19th, yes, we hope to find a way to involve you in Global Friendship Day the morning of the 19th, and then also, right, be able to join the Kenwood bus trip in the afternoon of the 19th. And then for those students who are fully vaccinated and do not need to quarantine are, yes, welcome and invited to participate in Global Friendship Day and the Kenwood bus trip on the 15th, and Global Friendship Day will be the 18th. And so again, all of that, can be updated in your orientation registration form in terms of what trip you're interested in, and also, right, Global Friendship Day sign up. I will leave my email in the chat once I mute myself. And if you're kind of unsure if you can participate and have kind of specific questions of kind of getting involved, send them my way.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So Gary asked the photo ID, if I submitted it last semester, do I have to submit a new one? Does anyone know the answer to that?
I mean, I would say it doesn't hurt to submit it again. And if you're writing out bus, if you don't have ID in system, we would definitely reach out to you, remind you to do that. But I would say it doesn't hurt if you want to submit it again.
And then Harrison asked, can I still change my roommate? I don't know. I think you may need to contact campus services for that, because I do not know the answer to that. Are we going to be in the rooms that's assigned to us for fall semester? Yes. If that's a quarantine related question, the answer is yes. You will be able to be in your assigned room, in your assigned hall. Will we be able to move in if we arrive at campus after 5 p.m.? No, offices are not open. You would not be able to get your ID card, which is required to get into your hall. So if that is the case, you will likely need to get a hotel for a night and then move in the next morning once you're able to get your ID card. I saw that Carol already responded to this one, but I thought it was an interesting question about the mobile ID app. I don't know if Dan or Yuanon, do you know if, can a student use their mobile ID app in lieu of the ID card to get into the hall?
Student can definitely use a mobile ID to get in the hall. I know it's a thing, but for brand new student, first time arriving, moving, it should work as well. But I do know sometimes the mobile ID doesn't work great.
I did put the link in the chat that takes you to the page for the mobile ID link, but I think if you are brand new to campus, I think starting off, you don't want any glitches.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Yuanon, that we might want to actually think about that a little bit more in terms of if students are able to do that without getting their ID card. But we would strongly recommend that you get your ID card and use your ID card initially before attempting to use the mobile ID app. About the bus trip to Kenwood Mall, can my relative come with me? Dan or Yuanon, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, yes, I think probably expect for all of those who do have relatives traveling with you to campus. And again, I know you've heard this a lot, expect more details about that coming soon, but yes, they can accompany you, and we will probably reach out for some more opportunities and information for parents and family who may be coming with you when you arrive at Miami.
For students having to quarantine, how can we get the physical ID? Well, you're going to have to check in with us to get your ID first. This is not a perfect quarantine situation. You're going to have to get to campus. You're going to have to get your ID card. And we would expect full safety precautions during that time: masks, social distance, until you can truly get into your room and start to quarantine. So if you're taking our bus, you'll be able, as Yuanon already said, be able to get your ID card from us when you get on the bus. Otherwise, you can check in at McMillan Hall to get your ID card, assuming you've submitted your photo ahead of time. So yes, you're going to have to take care of that before going into your hall to quarantine. Jeffrey, I'm very sorry to hear about your visa. I think for that one, I would recommend that you maybe send us an email and we can talk to you one-on-one about options and what you should do next. So you can email us at international@miamioh.edu. That's the one about the visa denial. Has anyone responded to Kazuma yet? I think Carol already did.
I'm actually trying to reach out to an advisor about Kazuma, so I'm working on it.
Okay, thank you. E asked, I've done the TB testing when I arrived in the US 2 years ago and have not left the US since then. I think you are able to, if you can provide documentation of your TB test that was done in the US, and provide that to the health center, I believe you can be exempt from TB testing. I know that was the case a number of years ago and have not heard otherwise since then. So sure, go ahead and try submitting that documentation of the test from within the US, and then it'll be up to health services, I think, to determine if that is acceptable. Okay, and then we've got that same question again about if I can get vaccinated right after arriving. So that is my number one question to figure out after this session. So if you've had so do I have to stay 3 to 5 days in quarantine before my COVID test, even if I had 1 dose of Moderna? So no, if you've had 1 dose of Moderna or Pfizer, you do not have to quarantine, which means you do not have to quarantine prior to your test. And assuming the test is negative, then you would still not have to quarantine after that. Will I be able to get the key to see my room before the move-in date? No. So you will not be able to move in prior to that August 12th date. That is the earliest date that you can get into your room. So Diksha, if I'm entering the US on the 7th and arriving on campus on the 16th, I only need to show a negative COVID report. I guess if I'm understanding that, I don't know if you're vaccinated or not. If you're not, it sounds to me like maybe you're quarantining elsewhere prior, or at least that should be the expectation, that you're quarantining elsewhere prior to arriving on campus, and that's fine. You don't need to show us documentation of that. It's a self-quarantine. We are not requiring students to show us documentation of negative COVID tests or vaccinations. That's all through the health center. The health center will be telling us who has to quarantine and who doesn't. But if you have already entered the US more than a week prior and have already completed your quarantine, then you would not be expected to do another quarantine upon arrival on campus. And then I think it sounds like Carol's working with Kazuma. Let's see. Can I join orientation online while I'm quarantining? Sorry, it got really noisy in my office. I don't know if you can hear that. I apologize. So yes, we will have a virtual orientation schedule. It'll be a little bit different from the in-person orientation schedule. We are actively working on it, trying to finalize it now, but there will be virtual orientation activities for those who are in quarantine. And I mean, orientation is considered mandatory. So yes, we would expect you to participate either virtually or in person, depending on your location and whether or not you're in quarantine. So if you've had one dose of Moderna, but Med Proctor does not approve it, this is where this gets a little tricky, and we're kind of leaving this up to the health center to kind of figure this out. Right, if you've only had one dose, then you technically have not been approved as fully vaccinated. You still need to get that second dose to be considered fully vaccinated, I think, through the Med Proctor system. But we are expecting health services to be able to tell us these individuals don't need to quarantine because their records show that they have had one dose of Pfizer or Moderna. So there's going to be a little bit of a kind of a discrepancy there, where you're not fully vaccinated, but you also don't have to quarantine. I've been fully vaccinated, but I can't log into Med Proctor, so I can't upload my vaccine certification. Yanon, I know you've said you've had some issues with students having trouble logging in. Do you have an answer for that one?
There are different type of issues. So I will put my email in the chat. You can message me directly. I can help walk you through the process.
Okay, so that was Harrison. Jung, if you want to follow up directly with Yuanon about that issue. What if my roommate has to quarantine and I don't have to? Right, that's a tricky one that I'm not sure I have a good answer to right now. I think that Campus Services is trying to start looking at lists of students to, I guess, avoid that issue when possible. I think if that situation happens, reach out right away if you feel uncomfortable. I mean, again, it's for the quarantine student, they are expected to quarantine. It's a self-quarantine. Keep in mind that they will already have had to show that they had a negative COVID test before coming to the US. They will also have to get tested again 3 to 5 days after arriving. So, I mean, the risk may be low, but I do understand there could be some concerns there. So I think if that situation happens, reach out right away. We'll find out what the response is to that situation from Campus Services and Residence Life. Can I live in the dormitory in August 17th? So do I need to make some requests? Okay, so this is from Zhicheng. I mean, yes, you're able to move in August 17th. If you are a brand new admit for fall 2021, you're actually able to move in as early as August 12th. If you are a fall 2020 or spring 2021 cohort student, you have to request pre-semester housing yourself to be able to move in early. So hopefully that answers that question. It looks like a student messaged me to say that you've rented an apartment off campus. Can you cancel the on campus? No, probably not. I mean, first of all first and second year students are required to live on campus. The only students who are not required to live on campus would be those who are over age 21 or married, or third years and above. And if you have already signed a housing contract, that is a legal binding document that you cannot get out of once you have signed it. So I don't know why you rented an apartment off campus, but you may need to try to see if you can get out of that one. Otherwise, you are paying for 2 apartments for this year. I think, wait, regarding the speaking, okay, Carol already responded to that one about the placement test. I think we're almost to the end here. Is the $40 per day rate of early housing for each person or each room? That is each person, whatever that cost is. And I think it varies a little bit depending on whether you're in the brand new group for fall or the new to the US group. There might be a slight difference in cost, but it's per person. So you would need to be prepared to pay for that. I think I caught up and answered all the questions that I saw. We are already a couple minutes over or past our time for this session. I appreciate all of these questions. I know it's a lot. So real quick, so there's not an orientation fee. What we have is an administrative services fee that all new international students have to pay. It's a one-time fee. So you only pay it in your first semester. And we made this determine last year that we would only charge it once students arrive in the US. So if you are a fall 2020 or spring 2021 cohort student who is going to be new to the US this fall, you will get charged that fee. It is $200 for undergraduate students and $100 for graduate students. It's a one-time fee, but it's not specifically for orientation. It's for all of the services, programs, activities, events, and support that our office provides throughout your time at Miami University. Do early housing rates include meals? No, that's only for the room. So if your meal plan has not taken effect yet and you need to purchase meals, you would need to use another form of payment, I believe, such as credit card. Miami is a cashless university, so you typically cannot use cash anywhere on campus to pay for things. So be prepared for that. How to check your Miami bill, that would be through Banner Web. So if you go to the My Miami, through My Miami, I should say, then there should be a link in My Miami to check your Miami bill. If you have trouble finding that, let us know. And I think it's also in one of the Canvas modules that walks you through how to access and pay your bill. Yuanon, I'm hoping you can respond to Aaliyah about I finished the required modules and it was required to register for classes, but I haven't gotten an email for a meeting. Perhaps you can respond to that.
Aaliyah, I will write down your name. If you just completed modules this morning, I have not out invitations, but also all the invitation goes through your Miami email. So if you're only checking your personal, you might have not seen, but I will take down your name and check that and contact you.
When will the meal plan become active? I'm not entirely sure if I know the answer to this question. I believe for brand new fall 2021 first years, is it Thursday the 19th? Does somebody know?
I believe it's the 18th.
Okay.
I believe the 18th is when, yes, the meal plan will become active and you'll have access to all the dining halls.
For the previous year cohort students, I think it's maybe not until the weekend. Do you know?
I believe that's the 20th.
Thank you.
But again, your housing dining contract should have those details. And I believe that link to that housing portal has been shared. So just check there for those details of exactly when those begin.
Thank you. How long should I be vaccinated before that I won't have to quarantine? So you're considered fully vaccinated 14 days after your final dose. Now, keep in mind, if you've received an FDA vaccine, Pfizer or Moderna, since they're exempting quarantine even after one dose, that time period kind of becomes irrelevant. But if you've gotten a WHO approved vaccine, you are considered fully vaccinated 14 days after that second dose. So that is what you should be prepared for. Again, I think I've caught up on the questions that have come through. We probably will need to go ahead and end this. I actually have another meeting I should be in, and I do appreciate all the questions. I know it's a lot, and it's complicated, and it's a little bit stressful and changing constantly. So thank you for hanging in there with us. We are trying to make this as smooth of a transition as we possibly can. I know it's a weird year, and we are just so grateful that you have selected Miami University, that most of you will be able to arrive on campus this fall and see our beautiful campus, and that we will be able to do some things in person with you, which we were not able to do much of last year. And so we're excited about that. If you have additional questions, you can always email our office at international@miamioh.edu. Our advisors check those emails every day. If it's an orientation related question, it's likely that we would forward it to Yuanon or Dan to answer. I know Yuanon's already in direct contact with a lot of you. So we still have one more newsletter to go out. Is that right, Yuanon? And we may also be following up with some other various communications between now and then if it looks like you have not done something that you need to do, something's missing, anything like that. Watch for those emails. Yes, keep checking your email, please, every day for new information. Okay, thank you so much, and I wish you a good day or a good night. And we look forward to meeting you soon.